My name is Jeremy Burton. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council, the network of 42 organizations that make up the organized Jewish community in Greater Boston. We are grateful to so many of our member organizations who are here with us today and to all of you in the community who've come out for this important day. Today is not only a day of rededication for this sacred site here in Boston, it is also in the Jewish calendar the 17th of Tammuz, the month that begins this day, the mourning for 3 weeks for many, many disasters and destructions in the history of the Jewish people. And in particular, today is a day that we mourn for the shattering of the 2 tablets that Moses brought down from Sinai. We mourn for the shattering of the walls of Jerusalem when Titus breached them as he began his invasion and pillage of the city. And on this day that we begin a period of mourning for shattering in the Jewish history, it is also a day to come together and celebrate rededication and renewal and rebirth and unity and an end to brokenness for us at this site here in Boston. Our first speaker, Rabbi Elaine Zecher of Temple Israel, Boston, will lead us off with a blessing.
In ancient days, the Israelites carried the Ark of the Covenant through the wilderness to the land of great promise. They marched with it at the center, protected and protecting the very soul of the people, the source of their strength. Its contents held the divine words of the Torah, a way to view the world and one another with care and kindness, to love the other as one loves oneself, to remember the feeling of being a stranger as a summoning of empathy for every person. The Ark contained something else equally as important. Remember when Moses had been up on the mountain receiving those words, and the people down below waiting, and then they panicked, and they built a golden calf to worship. Moses came down the mountain with sacred lights surrounding him, but the sight of the golden calf unnerved him. He took those tablets engraved by the divine and smashed them. But what happened to them? They didn't disintegrate or disappear. Jewish tradition teaches that they were also placed in the Ark of the Covenant, along with the ones Moses would receive later when he ascended the mountain again, the whole Torah and the broken ones together. From this, the people found strength. And on this day of remembering and repair, we too find strength and courage. Our brokenness is intermixed with that which makes us whole, the vulnerability of life and the fragility even of this magnificent structure that adorns and reminds our city of the worst in humanity, but also of humanity's best. We know there is much to repair in addition to the shattered glass. We witness the brokenness of hunger, of hatred, of those who feel lost and forgotten. These moments and this time call upon all of us to shine light into every dark corner, to lift up the fallen, to heal the sick, to free the captive, and to bring faith and strength and courage so that we can all walk together, making our way toward a world redeemed with God's help and each other's. Our present and our future depend on it. Amen.
Before we bring up our next speaker, we want to acknowledge that there's so many people here today who played essential roles in the establishment of this memorial and ensuring that it would be here in the center of Boston in perpetuity. In particular, Rick Mann, the former president of the New England Holocaust Memorial, and the chair of our Yom HaShoah committee, Steve Dickerman, who chaired the 15th anniversary and was instrumental in helping us identify the materials to quickly repair, Ira Jackson, the former vice president of the Holocaust Memorial, and a very special welcome to Mayor Ray Flynn, who played an essential role in saying that this memorial needed to be in the center of the city on the Freedom Trail and to be a part of the city of Boston for all time. And now, in keeping with that, Combined Jewish Philanthropies serves as the steward of this memorial site and its upkeep through the years, and we're pleased to welcome the president of Combined Jewish Philanthropies, Barry Schrage, who will introduce Governor Baker.
The importance of this place, the importance of this memory for all of us here and for all humankind is so clear, but I think that the symbolism is especially important. Thanks again to the former mayor for placing it here in this place. I just heard from Ira Jackson, who, along with Steve Grossman, was one of the major fundraisers for this project. And he reminded me that they had taken Chancellor Kohl, former Chancellor of Germany, here as he was planning the memorial that he was planning to build in Berlin. And when they described this to him, they said that this was sacred space on sacred ground. Sacred space on sacred ground. It remembers that moment when people forgot the essential message that we took out of Jerusalem after the destruction of the temple, the message that all of us are created in the image of God, that none of us survive alone, that all of us need each other. As Benjamin Franklin said, we will all hang together or we will all hang separately. Our lives, our sacred honors, all depend on each other. This is why this space is so important. We remember this time when the fact that people were created in the image of God was forgotten, and at that moment, women and men and babies and children were thrown into the fires. And we also remember, because of this sacred space, that it reminds us of that time when the people of America remembered that we are all people by the grace of God who can live free, that our rights are guaranteed by that same God. All of these facts that are so well symbolized by the Freedom Trail and by this place that we are. When we were here last to see the damage, I picked up a piece of glass, and I put it down and I said, this is a reminder. When Jews put a piece of glass, a piece of rock on a memorial, they do it to remember that we will be back to rebuild. We were destroyed and rebuilt. This memorial was vandalized and it has been rebuilt. That is our promise. Rededication, renewal, rebuilding for ourselves, for the Jewish people, and for all humankind. This is the message that we bring today. It's an honor to be here with all of you, with all of our partners and all of us who remember. During Kristallnacht, when glass was broken, we were alone. We are not alone. We are all together because we know that we cannot survive alone. And because instead of watching the damage take place, the police are here to protect us. God bless the police of the city of Boston. And as a strong statement that in this place, at this time, in the city of Boston, we are not alone. The mayor of Boston is here, and the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, who's always here when the community needs him, always here when we want help, always here to be a protector. So wonderful to introduce Governor Baker, the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. And let me just start, first of all, by thanking you all for being here to celebrate, as Barry put it, the renewal of this memorial. The one word I would have used in addition to the others that Barry brought up was remember. It's very important to remember what this memorial stands for, who it represents, and the horrific events that it speaks to. Events that, of course, we should always remember and never forget. You know, on the back of every coin in this country, there's the phrase, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. Now, I don't believe that was meant as a religious statement, but I certainly believe that for those of us who believe we are all God's children, and that there are far more things that bind us together than separate us, that we have far more in common with one another than we do the things that people would choose to divide us. Being here today, having this opportunity to renew this memorial, to rededicate this memorial, and to speak to its importance here on the Freedom Trail is especially important for us. Because as we know, the freedom, the people sailed in very small boats across an ocean and really did take their lives and the lives of everybody that was with them into God's hands. It was about freedom of religion. It was about freedom to practice your faith. It was about freedom to be who you were, to associate with who you wanted to associate with, to speak your mind. That's what the Freedom Trail represents. Freedom of religion, freedom to say what you want to say, freedom to associate with those you choose to associate with. Those are core principles and core values. And on a day like this, we should all come together and remember, in this time, when there are people who will do awful things, terrible things, to separate us and divide us, we should all remember that we only succeed because we are all in this together. We may not always agree. I certainly don't always agree with the mayor, Mr. Mayor. But I deeply believe in the importance of everybody's individuality and the opportunity that they deserve here, anywhere, to be who they are and to become what they can be. And that's what this memorial is all about. Thank you very much.
Before we bring up our next speaker, thank you very much, Governor Baker. We want to acknowledge some of the other dignitaries who are with us today. In particular, while Congress is in session, we appreciate the presence of representatives from the offices of Congressman Capuano and Congressman Kennedy. We are very grateful for the presence of two very good friends of the Boston Jewish community and of the New England Holocaust Memorial, Consul General of Israel to New England, Yehuda Yaakov, and Consul General of Germany to Boston, Rolf Hollerman. And before I invite up a dear friend and a leader in our community to introduce Mayor Walsh, I also want to acknowledge the presence of Boston Police Commissioner Evans and DA Diane Connolly, who've worked very hard on this case and in all ways to help us with our security here and throughout our community here in Boston. And now I'd like to invite up the former City Council President of Boston, the second generation of the survivor community, son of Stephen Ross, one of the founders of the Holocaust Memorial, and a dear friend, Mike Ross.
Thank you, Jeremy, and I just want to take the prerogative of introducing someone who's very special to me and very special to this place where we are, the founder of the New England Holocaust Memorial, my father, Steve Ross, who's here today. And Mayor Flynn is keeping an eye on my dad. When Steve Ross originally founded this memorial in '95, we celebrated its dedication, but we also feared the worst, anticipating that in only a matter of weeks, months maybe, one of these giant glass panels would be shattered in an act of hatred. We don't know exactly the precise motivation behind this recent destructive act just less than 2 weeks ago, whether as a result of direct anti-Semitism or indifference, spurred perhaps by mental illness. But here's the thing. Even if this particular act was not motivated by bigotry, and even considering that it took 22 years, which is quite remarkable, but even that it took 22 years to occur, this is no cause for us to celebrate, nor to be optimistic. Not when the Anti-Defamation League reports that United States anti-Semitic incidents have risen by 86% in 2017 after surging in 2016. Amid the hatred rampant in America today, we must use this episode to call for unity as we are doing here this afternoon. The measure of a community is not the act of a single misguided individual, but it's the response of the rest of us in the wake of that act. Here in Boston, that response was impeccable. During the early morning of this incident, it involved active citizens who chose to involve themselves and a diligent police force who responded in minutes. Collectively, our community came together to protect this monument, and in doing so, they helped protect our shared values. What I choose to hold on to from all of this is how as we as a community gather together in the wake of injustice. Just as the warning issued in the Martin Niemöller quote behind me that begins this memorial that says, "First they came for the socialists," Boston has continued to heed that warning and has embraced what it means to speak out for the other. In rededicating this memorial, let us also rededicate ourselves to speaking out for the other. Yes, to speak out against the resurgence of anti-Semitism within the United States today, but also for the other anti-isms that permeate our discourse in our public and private realms. And let us stand up for the policies that lift up the other, the homeless, the impoverished, the mentally ill, even to heal what is broken in that person who did this particular horrible act of vandalism, so that one day he too can be brought into the fold of our righteous community. I'd like to introduce our mayor by saying this. In the early mornings of the day that this memorial was the target of vandalism, I received 2 phone calls. One from Izzy Arbeiter asking me what I knew, and the second, minutes after, from Marty Walsh, telling me that an arrest had been made. Since first taking office, even before he was the mayor, Marty Walsh has prioritized speaking out for the other. We've seen it over and over. Of course, for the Jewish community, as Barry Schrag will say and just said, he stands up for us. But for all communities, whether for the marginalized, the other, the immigrant, his work embodies the message of Niemöller and understands that the words "never again" are merely words unless there is action to back them up. Thank you, Mayor, for time and time again for backing those words with your action. Mayor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Councilor Ross, and it's great to see your dad, Steve, here. Steve Ross, great to see you here today, and I want to thank you. Jeremy, thank you and the Jewish Community Relations Council for all the great work that you do. Barry, you know, I don't have to say what you mean to the community, the Jewish community, but also the entire Boston community. Thank you as well. Janet Stein, the Survivors Association president, and all those Holocaust survivors and families that are here today. Thank you for being here. Religious leaders, thank you as well. Governor Baker, obviously, thank you for being here. Commissioner Evans and District Attorney Dan Conley, I want to thank them. There's other elected officials here as well, and I'm going to try and capture them because they're important parts of our community. We have State Representative Aaron Mikowitz is here. Thank you, Aaron, whose district I believe we're in. City Councilor Billy Lenahan, thank you, Billy, and I believe that we're in your district as well. City Councilor Anisha Sabi George, thank you, Councilor George, for being here. Representative, my former colleague from Seekonk, Representative Howard's here. Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Steve, for being here with us today. Representative Driscoll from Milton, thank you, Representative, for being with us here today. City Councilor George Jacob, who obviously is a dear friend of not just the Jewish community, but the entire city of Boston. Thank you, Councilor, for being here with us today. If I miss any other elected officials, I will try and get you as we move on here. And the governor said something very important, that we don't always agree, but as long as he understands that I'm always right, we'll be in good shape. You know, that's all I want to make sure. I want to make sure. But I want to thank the entire Boston community for the outshowing of support over the last couple of weeks. Many gathered here following the incident of vandalism that happened here. It was moving to see so many people come together at this very sacred place, and a lot of phone calls. A lot of people concerned about what was happening. And that was something that's unique and special to our city here in Boston. And it gets back to here so soon to get this rededication moving forward. As Michael talked about, Councilor Ross talked about, they were anticipating vandalism when they built this memorial. And they made other panes of glass. And those panes of glass for 22 years haven't had to been used. And it's sad that they have to be used today. But it also shows the resiliency of this community coming together. To the Holocaust survivors in our city, I know seeing this memorial damage was very painful to you. The same goes to the families of the Holocaust survivors and members of the Jewish community. In truth, our entire city was affected. This memorial means a lot to all of us. It stands as a symbol of everything that we want to be as a city. It's important for us. It also stands as a symbol of democracy and of freedom. It stands as a clear commitment that we will never forget what happened during the Holocaust. We will never forget the lives and the legacies of the victims on these glass walls. As a city, as a country, we promise to ensure it never happens again. It's our duty as a city to spread that message. We bring the lessons of the Holocaust into our schools and throughout our city. We bring it into our public spaces. Boston stands with the Jewish community forever and always. And this beautiful memorial will continue to stand in the heart of our city for years to come, just as it did when Mayor Flynn dedicated this land. And to whoever sits in that corner office, it will mean the same for all of us. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your inspiring words. In addition to all the incredible professional staff at CJP and JCRC who worked hard over the last 2 weeks to bring us to today, we also want to recognize so many partners, contractors and workers who volunteered their time and their service in order to restore the memorial. In particular, Karis Glass, the Painters District Council 35 of the AFL-CIO, who worked together to quickly replace the panel, Harry Miller and Company, the WES Construction Company, and Interstate Rentals. We are grateful to all of you for being partners and for stepping up in this time. And now I would like to invite up Janet Stein, the president of the American Association of Survivors and Generation After of Greater Boston, who will be followed by Izzy Arbeiter, a survivor who many of you will recall spoke so eloquently 2 weeks ago on the day of this shattering and shared his story and his connection to this site. Janet.
fast day is not only a solemn day, but it's also a day of empowerment. If for just one moment in the scope of our lives, we feel what those who perished and those who survive may have felt each and every day of the war. It is fitting that we gather here on this prophetic day of days to bear witness to the repairs completed on this memorial and to affirm our commitment to sanctify those of us who perished in the Holocaust. May the 6 million taken from the world by hatred know that this sacred site is dedicated in homage to them. For those who lie in mass graves where they were slaughtered, for those who perished and were left in the darkness of the forest, or fell from disease, malnutrition, dehydration, or devastation in the streets of the ghettos, for those who were carted out of gas chambers where they had been asphyxiated, and for those whose remains were ashes in the crematoriums where they were burnt, may they know that there were survivors, and that the survivors who came to this city built new lives and erected this memorial in the heart of Boston. For each onlooker, each bystander, each passerby to know that the survivors, their children, and their grandchildren will not allow the lives of those taken from us to ever be forgotten. We are especially grateful today to stand here with veterans of the United States. Without the veterans, none of us would be here today. And to that, as a child of a survivor, and speaking on behalf of the entire survivor community, our debt of gratitude to you is endless. For Steve Ross, who came to this country as a survivor with my father, we will forever be grateful that each and every day you walked into Mayor Flynn's office until you wore him down and this memorial was built. Thank you, Steve. May the souls of the 6 million who perish be bound to us in love, and may they rest in peace knowing that we are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Governor Baker. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Walsh. As a survivor of the Holocaust, I want to express mine and the survivors' appreciation for your participation in this most meaningful event as we join together in this shared sacred purpose of restoring the shattered glass of the Holocaust Memorial. This memorial is dedicated to the 6 million men, women, and children who were murdered by the Nazis. As we entered the first tower, I think at the beginning there, we see the word remember. It is incredible. In the pathway of October 1926 in Starahovice. Do I remember? I'm a Holocaust survivor. Yes, I do remember. After 5.5 years as an inmate in 6 concentration camps, including Auschwitz, I remember every day of my life. But there is one day especially that sticks out, and it was with me and is with me today and will be with me to the rest of my life. That day was October 26, 1942, in a town called Starachowice in Poland. In the middle of the night, without prior warning, the Einsatzgruppen, a special unit of SS that was designed for the purpose of exterminating the Jewish people in Europe, came into the ghetto and ordered all the Jewish people to leave everything behind and meet in the center of the town. Over there was a selection. The Nazis selected the young and who, in their opinion, were strong enough to perform slave labor for the Nazis. They were placed on one side. The elderly and the youngest were placed on the right side. I was a teenager. I was never away from home. This time I was separated away from my parents. I didn't want to be separated. I wanted to be with my parents. No matter what happens to them, let it happen to me too. At the risk of my life, I ran back from the one column to the column where my parents and my 7-year-old brother were. And I said, let us all go together. My father at that time realized what's happening here, and he said to me and to my brothers, children, go back over there. He realized what's taking place. And he says, children, go back over there and save yourself. And if you'll survive, remember to carry on with Jewish life and Jewish tradition. I did go back. My column with the people from the town of Starachowice, those were who were selected for slave labor, were taken and placed in a concentration camp. My family, my mother, my father, and my 7-year-old brother were taken to the nearby station, railroad station, placed in cattle cars, and deported to Treblinka, to the death camp of Treblinka, and were murdered that day in the gas chambers. And I ask, why? Why did that have to happen? The word that separated us, that my father said those 3 words, go back over there and save yourself. Those were the last 3 words that my father said to us. We never heard from him, we never saw him, we never heard, but we know what happened. We're meeting here today to restore a part of the Jewish life, broke the partial destruction of the memorial that we so hard work to build. Today, we are restoring that part. Before I finish, I must express my sincere thanks and remind, while we're at the word remember, the people that did so much work and contributed so much to the effort so that that memorial be built in Boston. The number 1 person, and very little was said about him, except by his son, was Steve Ross. I don't think that Steve is getting enough thanks for his effort and for the work that he put in this to build this memorial. We must also remember and say thank you to the former mayor of Boston, Mayor Flynn, without whom this memorial would have never been built. Because look, that beautiful land, the center of the city, very expensive piece of property. We would never be able to get that land if it wasn't for Mayor Flynn. Thank you very much, Mayor. We have done a whole line of people that devoted their time and money again to contribute to have the success with the memorial. One person that I haven't seen since, I think, the dedication of the memorial, but I was honored and assigned to speak about his grandson, is Ira Jackson. Ira, thank you very much. Your contribution was great to this event. Steve Dickerman, his working very hard there. Thank you very much. And again, there are so many people that I would have to mention their name, but they told me last time I got 2 minutes to speak, but they were satisfied with my speech, so today they gave me 3 minutes. So I'll have to finish very, very quick, and maybe the next time I'll get 4 minutes. The horrible suffering that we, the survivors, endured in the concentration camps cannot be forgotten. When we repeatedly say remember, we turn first of all to the world around us, where so many try to minimize, to detract, or even to deny the tragedy of the Holocaust. We are grateful to the German government for making the denying of the Holocaust a crime punishable with imprisonment. Our commitment to remember implies not only remembrance, but a warning that such tragedies must never happen again, must never be repeated anywhere in the world. The memory of the Holocaust must become part of the human conscience for all time, beyond sorrow, suffering, and death. The tragic murder of European Jews must inspire mankind to commit itself against all manifestation of genocide and racial hatred. May a new love for humanity be born out of the horrors that we know. We pray and hope that dedication and remembrance like this will take roots and continue in the future and with future generations. We pray and hope that peace and understanding will continue to grow out of the terrible destruction that we witnessed during the Holocaust. We pray and hope for a world blessed with peace, understanding, and goodwill to all mankind. Thank you.
Thank you, Izzy, for your incredibly inspiring words, and Janet, for you as well, for reminding us of why we are here. We are going to conclude today's program with a reflection and a prayer. And before I invite up our final speakers, I just want to thank as well, in addition to all the other outpourings of support 2 weeks ago, the outpouring of support from the interfaith community here in Boston. And I want to particularly recognize two very close friends of the Jewish community who are here today, the Reverend Dan Smith, Vice President of the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, and Mr. Yusufi Valley, Executive Director of the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center. And now I invite up the Reverend Dr. Nancy Taylor of Old South Church in Boston, who will lead us in a closing reflection, followed by Rabbi Elise Winnick, who will lead us in a closing prayer. And then we will invite the governor, the mayor, and Izzy to unveil the repaired memorial.
The assault upon the New England Holocaust Memorial. Stone hurled upon glass. Numbers, tattoos, crumbling and spilling to the earth. Violation, desecration, and sacrilege. But it was not ruin. A blow, yes. Violation, oh yes. A painful defilement, to be sure, but it was not ruin. Not ruin because we will not allow it to be. We deny that possibility. Instead, we gather here. We are here together, the city, law enforcement, Jewish leaders, Muslim leaders, Christian leaders, civic leaders, proclaiming that the memorial behind me is all and more than it ever was. A tribute and an inspiration, but also a sentinel and a warning. A sentinel to justice, a warning against hate. The New England Holocaust Memorial stands in glass, but it was wrought in agony and tears, in memory and in defiance. It is today, as it was yesterday, as it will be tomorrow, a sentinel and a watchman for human rights. So desecration, yes. Sacrilege, yes. Violation, yes, but not ruin. For this memorial stands still, stands defiant, as a tribute to the memory of those who perished, and as a warning to any who would dare trespass upon the freedoms of others, and as an inspiration to all those whose lives are devoted to love, respect, understanding, and peace and goodwill among the totality and the diversity of the human family. Will somebody say amen?
I want to express deep gratitude to all of you for being here. In particular, I want to express gratitude to Jeremy and Nami and the JCRC team for giving us a place to come together to acknowledge this very important moment. And mostly I want to acknowledge the survivors and their families. You have entrusted us with a sacred responsibility to tell your stories and the stories of countless others. We do not take that lightly, and today and always we will remember. If you are able, would you rise, please? El male rachamim shochen bamromim aמצי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמות כל אחינו בני ישראל שנטבחו בשעה אנשים, נשים וטף שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו שמסרו את נפשם על קידוש השם בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם אנו בעל הרחמים אז תיראים בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו ושלום על משכבותיהם, ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, whose radiance is like the heavens, to the souls of all the men, women, and children of the house of Israel who were slaughtered, strangled, and burned in the Shoah. May they rest in paradise. Master of mercy, may they find eternal shelter beneath your sheltering wings, and may their souls be bound up in the bond of life. Adonai is their portion. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Photographers who wish to get a better shot are welcome to come forward and use the platform. We ask the rest of you to hold back for a moment while the actual unveiling occurs.